Hey everybody, welcome to TIW Podcast. I'm Eric, and today I watched The Amazing Race Season 31, Episode 9, Let's Split. Spoilers ahoy, if you haven't seen this episode yet, don't want to find out what happens, then stop listening and go watch it. It's another great one. I love this show so much. Oh my god, I was smiling and laughing like the entire time, but then also a little bit of yelling towards the end, like no, this can't be. So skipping right to the, I'm pretty bummed out now because Chris and Brett have been eliminated from the race despite their incredible start to this leg. They were in first place going into the detour, and things just didn't go well for them from that point on. They're just the one specific task did. They did very well, and the rest of it did as well as anybody else on everything else. But they were the last to arrive at the pit stop. So they flew from Switzerland to Croatia. And this is the whole thing at the beginning, that getting the flights there are all these different connections. The first two teams, they got a flight that got in at 11:20 a.m. That was the teams of Tyler and Corey and Brett and Chris. That's how Brett and Chris started off right in the lead. And then the second flight, what everybody thought was the second flight, got in at 12:30, but really ended up getting in an hour and a half later than that. But Nicole and Victor did not know that. They were really annoyed that Team Fun cut in front of them. They perceived it as that cutting in front of them, and so they went off somewhere else, and they ended up on a completely different flight that actually got them in only 10 minutes after the first flight. So it kind of worked out in their favor. And we'll get to the placement of everybody else real quick. It worked out really well for them. They almost won this leg. But we'll get to that in just a second. So their first task is called Serve 'em Up. They had to deliver 6 drinks at the beach and find their new friend, the roaming gnome, the Travelocity roaming gnome. Later on, when the Afghanimals get there, one of them, it was kind of annoying, like how enthusiastic all three of the teams that ended up on the late flight ended up being. Like they had too much energy for this, and it was a little bit obnoxious. But I did really like that the Afghanimals, one of them goes, "Oh, who's winning at Uno?" And then the guy responds, "Oh, this guy right here." I just like that a lot. But anyway, they don't get there for a while. Chris and Brett do that first, and they do it real quickly because they can go to the closest people, a group of 6, to get their gnome from them. They then head to Marjan Cave Church, where they have to deliver a bread to a monk in order to get a detour clue. So that was pretty cool and kind of ridiculous that they're putting this little backpack with a piece of bread in a loaf of bread into a basket to pulley up to the window where the monk is. It is the gnome wearing the little backpack. That was the ridiculous part of it. But then they head off to the detour, which they had a choice between Poetry in Motion, where they were pulled around very, very roughly behind a boat on a big inner tube thing. And while they were doing that, they had to memorize a poem. And all of the teams did motions with their poem, whatever they could to try and memorize it. And then the other choice was washed in from the ocean. And initially, Brett and Chris chose that option, and Tyler and Corey also chose that, but then decided very quickly that they would switch, that they were not going to have a good time doing that. Because Brett and Chris had already been there, and they were not having very much luck so far. And it's they chose it because they had experienced snorkeling. So washed out in from the ocean, they had to find a goblet and 5 coins using little metal detectors while snorkeling out into the ocean. And it did look like some fun, but it apparently is very, very cold, so that probably made it a lot less fun. So Brett and Chris, they switched. Eventually, they switched when they only had 2 coins left to find. They tried the inner tube once, and I love the reaction that Brett was just like, "Yeah, we're gonna go back on the boat." After he does like 2 lines of the poem, the 2 very wrong lines of the poem. I also like when Tyler and Corey, their first attempt, they go up to the guy who's listening to everybody recite the poems, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll be right back. We don't know the poem. We'll be right back." They don't even try that first time. I really like that. But so everybody ended up doing the poetry in motion. Although there's a lot of switching going on. After the one try, then they went. Chris and Brett went back to the washed in from the ocean, and then tried for a really long time. And then when Colin and Christy finally went there, and they asked them like, how long have you been doing this? And they said, we haven't found anything in like 2 hours. Like, oh, then we're going to go do the other thing. So Colin and Christy ended up doing the poetry in motion as well. Brett and Chris finally switch over to that. And they are, by that point, they're in last place. Like, everybody has completed the poetry in motion. And then they finally get it done. But, and it's not quite enough to get through it, because the next task, the roadblock, we end up with 4 of the teams working together to get through this task. And then the one team the one teammate who ended up there alone was Floyd, and he used his marching band experience to just memorize the coordinates. He nailed it right away. So the first 2 teams that got there were Corey from his team and Nicole from her team. They worked together, and that was a great way to do it. I'm surprised it took them that long to do it. And then the other set of teams was Leo and Christy. They worked together, and they did like the numbers on a keypad, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in 2 halves, because there's 18 guys, and they nailed it. Like, as soon as they worked together, as soon as Christy got there and they're like, hey, let's work together. You get those 9, I get those 9. And yeah, they did it right away, which obliterated the chance that Brett had to catch up to them doing the task by himself. But he did do it. And I mean, it's a respectable finish. I don't think he finished behind by very much. I just wish that they weren't eliminated. So the winners of this, let's see, there was some stuff. So the roadblock that took place at Diocletian's palace, and it's who's ready to get their marching orders. And there were 18 soldiers. 5 of them had red ribbons on their helmets, and they had the whole shields thing that they like did a formation and then hid themselves inside the shields. And then you had to hit, it was like the shell game kind of thing. You had to remember which soldiers were where. I guess I should have explained that before I talked about the strategy that they used for it. But yeah, that seemed like really, really cool to see, and potentially really frustrating, but also really rewarding when you figure out like, oh, what's the best way to do this? If I was there to do it just by myself, I would like to think that I would think of how I would have. I would like to think that I would have come up with the way that they were able to work together. But I think I would have done just had the 3 rows. Just think of the 3 rows, and then just remember the numbers from each row. So like 4, 4, 5, 1, 3. And that would be from back to front, or from top to bottom, something like that. Because that's basically how they did it splitting in halves. At least Leo and Christy did. She was like, "Oh, I've got 6," and he says, "Oh, I've got 3, 5, 7," and that worked really well too. So yeah, there's a lot of it was like a really fun game, but with like real people. A little bit like a live chess game with like actual soldiers on the board. It was kind of similar to that in a way. Was that in History of the World Part 2? Is it Part 2? Part 1? The Mel Brooks movie that happens in there, I think. But anyway, at the pit stop. The pit stop was at the port there, Makajuska at Split Harbor, and they had to row boats over to where Phil was. And also at the pit stop was a local lady with a whole bunch of Dalmatian dogs, and there weren't 101 of them, but there's let's say an F load. There was a lot of Dalmatian puppies there, and that was super cute. So the winners of this leg, 4th win in a row, absolutely dominating. Tyler and Corey. Wow. They win a trip to Mexico, and they I think they mentioned that they're going to a Cirque du Soleil show. They said the Cirque show. Maybe I was just hearing what I wanted to hear, because I don't, if they were actually talking about a Cirque du Soleil show, they would say Cirque du Soleil, but I just heard the word Cirque, and I don't know. But I think that there is a show currently in Mexico, and maybe they could go to that. But all the other stuff that they mentioned winning that trip sounded really cool too. Second place was Nicole and Victor. I was super happy for them. I am rooting for them, and Tyler and Corey. And if either of those two teams win, I will be very happy about that. Everybody else can go just F off. Not really. No. They all 3 of the other teams, they really got on my nerves in this episode with how obnoxious they were being once they finally got into the task. It was the kind of thing where like, oh, this would have been such a pleasant time if they hadn't arrived. Maybe it's being annoying. Anyway, third place was Team Fun. 4th place was Colin and Christy, even though they forgot. That was the thing that I thought was going to get Brett and Chris what they needed. The chance they needed was that Colin and Christy completely forgot their gnome back at the detour. So they had to go back and get it. And that lost them a lot of time, but didn't lose them enough time to lose this leg. Because 5th place, it might have been in opposite orders, Colin Christie or Leo and Jamal. I don't know, because they worked together on the roadblock. They pretty much got there at the same time to the pit stop. But Leo and Jamal were in 5th place, or they were in 4th place. I don't know. I didn't rewind it. I could have rewound it like 10 seconds and found out. I think he said Colin and Christie first. So I think that they were in 4th. And then in last place, in 6th place, I wrote a 7 for some reason. That was dumb. In 6th place and eliminated from the race is Chris and Brett. And I'm so sad to see them go, but I'm also really happy that this episode was so much of them, and they were so much fun to watch in this episode. And if you got to go out, at least go out with lots of camera time and really entertaining camera time. So, that's it. I'm like I said, I'm rooting for Tyler and Corey and Nicole and Victor. Nicole and Victor are the only ones who are not from The Amazing Race, who are still in the race. And that's another reason why I'm really excited, really rooting for them. I'm actually recording this after episode 10 has aired. That aired just a couple hours before I recorded this. I successfully avoided all spoilers from episode 9 this entire week. And I'm not sure how I did that. I guess I follow a lot more wrestlers and stuff now than I do Amazing Race people. So I did avoid those spoilers. Um, and hopefully I can do the same until I can watch the episode that aired tonight. It's going to be a lot easier or maybe a lot harder because everybody is talking about it right now. But hopefully I can watch that in the next couple of hours and talk about that and post the next episode real soon. Unless it's a double episode, then I might have to wait until tomorrow to watch it. I'm not sure, and I'm afraid to look it up because I don't want to look up spoilers. So I'm just gonna wait till the episodes are on the episode or episodes are on CBS All Access. I finished watching Roswell, New Mexico season. Actually, I might have like 5 minutes left of it. Season 1, very good, very cool stuff happening there towards the end of it. So I recommend checking it out. It's on Netflix now. It's the whole season is on Netflix. Is on Snetflix. Snetflix, where you get all your snets. Um, yeah, I think that's it. I will have the new comic book episode for this week very soon as well. I do actually want to. There's a bunch of number ones that came out this week, and I want to read a couple of those so I can actually talk about the comics instead of just speculating and trying to remember what happened in the last issue, that kind of thing. So stay tuned for that as well. And also this week's NXT episode, NXT and NXT UK. I did get a little bit spoiled on that. A little bit annoyed with myself for getting spoiled, not even thinking about that. I could have easily just scrolled right past seeing someone from NXT UK because said, "Oh, I'm not going to read what the caption is underneath this Instagram post. I won't know what that actually is talking. It could just be talking about some random person." But nope, it was a spoiler for who won a certain match. But anyway, the important match of this week. But that has nothing to do with the Amazing Race, so I'm going to stop talking about that right now. Let me know what you thought about episode 9 by tweeting me at TIW Podcast. Go to TIWpodcast.com for more reviews. If you enjoyed this episode or anything else on the site, please share some links with your friends. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you like to listen. And join me next time. Stay safe out there in all the infinite multiverses. And this has been... I messed all of that up. I'll see you next time. I'll see you next time. So stay out there in all the infinite multiverses. This has been... This... I gotta work this. I gotta actually just like write it down. Like figure out how... like to work all that in. I don't know. Anyway, see you next time here on TIW Podcast. Bye. Oh, and then I have to unlock the iPad to stop the recording. Okay. Bye, everybody.